into some heavy duty prepping for the AP test time. And that means we need to be reviewing the DBQ and exactly what you need to do to be successful on the DBQ. So, yes, I know this is photocopied weird. That's why this is going to be all about notes. So, put your name at the top and label it with notes because you're not going to be doing this DBQ. We're going to be talking through techniques for how to be successful on the DBQ. So, first and foremost, when you're doing a DBQ, you have to find your actual prompt, the one sentence that tells you what you are answering. It's generally found in the same place on every prompt. So right now, I want you to find and underline the one sentence that tells you what you're supposed to be answering on this particular prompt. Go. Find and underline. What did you underline? Yep, defense challenges or qualifies the claim that professional athletes are overpaid. That is your prompt. That is what your thesis must focus on. That is when you are reading what you need to find evidence to either prove or disprove. But one of the big things that you're going to be graded on when you do the AP test is ATQA. Answer the question asked. Don't go off topic. So you have to answer the question that's actually been asked. Okay, the prompt, this is where you generally find the prompt. So what are you going to find in front of the prompt? Sometimes it's short, sometimes it's long, but it's always the same thing. What is this? Yeah, it's the context, the background. They know that there's no way for them to write a prompt that every kid sort of has equal access to, that every kid has thought about equally. So they typically do start with some sort of context or background. Can you use this for your intro? Yes. Is it terribly impressive if you use this for your intro? No, not really. But hey, if you're at a fix and you're in a jam, you can certainly go for it. Okay, now this will always set you up to be successful with documenting. And it's always going to be roughly the same information. And the first thing it's going to tell you is you have two choices when you are documenting. Choice number one is what? To just use source A, source B, source C. You don't even worry about the names, just use source and which letter it is. Choice number two is what? To use, well, it's not always, you notice here on source D and E, you are missing names, but they will always give you the formal citation. So choice two is to use the formal citation. Does it matter whether you choose source one or source two? Or choice one or choice two? Yes or no? Does it matter? No, it 100% does not matter. You can use either. But guess what you can't do? You cannot mix and match. So you cannot use source B, USA Today E, source A, Holloway. No. Use column A or column B, but do not mix and match. And that would be okay because, well, actually, that would be okay if you're using choice one. Because if you say in source F, Holloway explains, Holloway is just part of the sentence. If you are using the formal citations, why would you reference what letter it was? So if you are doing choice number 1 and you say in source F, Holloway says, blah, blah, blah. This is the citation. So you are using choice number 1. This is simply the subject of the sentence. Does that make sense? But if you're using choice 2, if you're using choice number 2, would you ever reference what letter the document was? No. So if you're doing choice 2, you would just say Holloway says. And that would become the citation right there. So just make sure that the question really is, are you using the document letters or not? If you're using document letters, you're using choice. If you're not, you're using choice. And don't make up your own citations. Use the ones they give you. Deal? Okay, so here is the trap. The trap is students are going to turn to the first page, start reading, and then they're going to try and read this packet from front to back in its entirety. There is a problem with that. How long do you get to read the packet? You have 15 minutes to read. You then have 40 minutes to write your essay, which gives you a total of 55 minutes. Do you have time to read this packet front to back? Oh, heck no. Which is why you have to figure out how to narrow down which articles you should really look at. Well, we had a whole unit that told you what evidence you should use when you are writing. Basically, this is a research paper. What sources do you know you should or should not use? What's wrong with newspapers? Okay, so it's not newspapers themselves. It's that you have to judge things on a scale of credibility. Are things credible or not? And in each of these sources, where are you going to look to determine if something is credible? They give you a citation and then a brief summary of what that source is. So, what should your first stop be? And it should not take more than 30 seconds. What should you do with 30 seconds? You should look at the citations and the summaries, and right now you should figure out which of these sources are credible and which are not. Go. $30. Okay, which sources should you have taken one look at it and gone, oh, heck no, don't even waste your time reading? Okay, what's wrong with B? B has got some really nice numbers in it. Don't I want numbers? Don't numbers make good evidence? Wait a minute. Is it a yeah, it's not even a random guy. It is an unsigned letter. Numbers are only as credible as the person behind them. Do we know who's behind this? Can we call these numbers credible? We can't. And that right there is one of the traps they've laid out for you. They want to know whether you can spot that something is not credible. And we've talked credibility rather extensively. So you should have looked at that. Dude, an unsigned letter to the editor. Are we going to listen to that? Well, somebody will, but somebody ain't getting a good score on the AP either, because that's bad logic. Do they want you going to college with bad logic? No. Now, the nice thing is that also means I don't have to read it. I got 15 minutes. I need to find my good sources. What else can I eliminate? Okay, D. Again, we have a letter to the editor. Do we have any information on whether this person is any kind of expert? Guess what I should do with D? But do they tell us who they are? I can tell you, hey, I was a pro. I almost went pro when I was in college. I was a big name softball player. Does that make it true? No. I don't know which end of a softball bat to grab, so I'm going with no. This is not your best evidence. Now, it is clear they are trying to build in credibility, but when you look at the most objective way to evaluate credibility, is there a lot here? No, because if they're not willing to put their name next to it, then yeah, how do you trust it? If they are a former pro athlete and a team representative and they want people to listen to them, what should they have done with this letter? They should have put their name on it. So this is not, now, is it more credible than B? Maybe, maybe not, but this should still not rank high. Last one we should really ignore. Letter to the editor, unsigned. Someone not willing to put their name on it. So what should we do with E? Yeah, we really should ignore it. Now, if you are not a fast reader, you are going to save yourself time by not even looking at them. If they aren't credible, don't waste your time. If you are a fast reader, you can still use them as a source. But here is the deal. Can you use this evidence and say that this is factually correct? Can you look at this opinion and say that this is what most people believe? No, because this is the view of one random person. You can use it to show that there is a certain point of view out there. Some people, including the author of Source B, believe that. What does that sound like a setup for? Yes. If this might be a place to mine for information for a concession. But this is not anything you want to rely on for evidence. Make sense? Okay, take 30 seconds and write yourself some notes. Thank you. How many sources do you have to use? 3. Is it legit to only read 3? Yeah, that's fine. As long as the 3 you're reading are 3 credible sources. If you decided that B, D, and E were the shortest ones, so that's where you were going to pull all your evidence from, what would already be true? What would already be true of your score? You would already be scoring very, very low because you would have favored things that are not credible over things that are credible. Now, are there any sources that are so credible, so scientific, so beyond reproach that you absolutely have to use them? Okay. A, Ask Men, online article. Is an online article in something called Ask Men, does that sound like, wow, that is so amazing, I must use it? No. Okay. Someone said C. Christian Science Monitor, an article from a national magazine. Is that so scientific, so credible that you're like, I have to use that? No. So in this particular packet, you don't have anything that fits that bill. But sometimes they will give you one source that is highly scientific, one source that is, the credibility is beyond, that you look at who wrote it, where it was published, and you go, dang, oh, dude, that's credible. If you have a source that is above and beyond in credibility, what do you have to do? You have to use it and you have to respect it. You cannot ignore scientific information just because you don't like that side. So if they give you a source that says 100%, yes, scientifically, here's what's going on, you can't ignore that in order to just hold to your own personal beliefs. You can then do a qualify, say, okay, source G clearly has a point, and this is how much I'm going to concede. However, here are the conditions under which I still hold my position. So you can qualify it, but if you have something that's highly scientific, highly credible, you are not allowed to just pretend it does not exist. Make sense? So the two sources I would start with, I would start with reading A. Why would I start by reading A? I am not only seeing a table, but I am seeing a lot of numbers in here. And what do I know about numbers? Numbers make nice evidence. So I would definitely start reading source A. I would also start reading source, I would start reading source F. Why? Because it has the same credibility as source C, but this has the advantage of being shorter, so I can get through it quicker. So those are the two that I would probably read. So do me a favor. Let's, starting with source A, let's read and take some notes so you can see it starts. Economics theory would suggest that with expansion comes increased supply, which would decrease the price that people would pay for goods or services. What happened was the opposite. Why? As the number of teams increased, so did the number of jobs. The number of jobs, so did the demand for players. So really, this is saying, are they overpaid? It's saying, no, it's all about economics. Economics. So I would recommend that you kind of keep track of the yeses or the nos and take very quick notes. If you have trouble focusing, here's a rule. If you keep your pencil moving, it will force your brain to keep moving, and that will keep you from spacing out. So let's take 5 minutes. Do the best to get through source A and F. Go. Karina, Cadence, is there any reason you two have like exiled yourself from the group? My freshmen just don't put desks back in the right place as well. So it's not a naughty seat. It's not separated from the group. Okay, how'd you guys do in 5 minutes? Well, you have a 15-minute reading period, and if 5 minutes got you the two, what seemed to be two of the more critical pieces, do y'all see how 15-minute reading is not as bad as it seems like? Yeah, because that was only a third of the time, and we've done the two of the three pieces we need to. Now, I'm hoping you spotted the trap. Overall, source A. When I look at source A, It's talking about, yes, the increases are too fast, that this is not true economics because you have these subsidies that are in fact screwing up the economics of it, that it's not true supply and demand, that you've got this doubling. In other words, what's the overall position of source A? With the question, are they being paid too much? Overall, the position of source A is yes. So what happened with this opening? We initially labeled the opening, are they paid too much? No, it's economics. Wait a minute, what is this opening? Yes. Ah, close, very close. What are they using as a hook? What structure? Hint, giving the other side's position. This is a concession rebuttal. And they are using it as a hook because what they're saying is, hey, other people say, hey, here's how, it looks like salaries are just a matter of economics. It's supply and demand. So it sets that up. But then the minute you get into the actual argument, it's like, nope, here are all of the ways it's not supply and demand because these subsidies, because this, this doubling, the fact they're using it as status, that this is not true economics. So if your position is no, they're not paid too much, and you pull information from here to support yourself, what does that immediately tell the reader? Yeah. Either you only looked at the top, or when you were reading, you did not recognize that this was a concession. You thought that this source was truly saying, no, they're not overpaid, when the reality is this source is saying, yes, they are overpaid. So you have to watch out for concessions because that is one of the things that you need to be aware of. If you are trying to prove that something is a yes, that's true, you need to pull evidence from an article that supports you with yes. Make sense? Okay, Article F. Is this saying yes, they're overpaid, or no, they're not? Yes. And this adds some of the psychology. You have numbers, but it adds some of the psychology that's talking about that it becomes a one-upmanship, that it becomes a respect issue. And in the other article, they're talking about how people are going to be getting $100 million deals. In this article, they're getting $100 million deals. Okay. Now, of the credible articles we have read, 2 of them have already taken the position of yes. What's going to be the problem if we try saying no, they're not overpaid? Yes. We're going to be ignoring too many credible sources. If I already have if I'm looking at just my credible sources and I see they are leaning heavily towards yes, that means I have 2 choices. I can either agree with them and say, yes, they're overpaid, and then I'm going to build my argument. Now, if I do that, what do I need to have? I need to have a concession. And now, because I know I need to have a concession rebuttal, I can start looking at the other articles for, hey, where's some evidence that I can rebut? However, I still have another option I can use. Qualify. I can still qualify it and say, yes, top players are overpaid. Because that's what both of these articles have talked about. However, who have they not talked about? Every other player. What about the mid-tier players? What about the what do they call the minor league players? So if one of my other articles provides me some information, I might still be able to qualify. But when I started by looking at my credible sources, and I already have two of the three credible sources that are going for yes, I can't ignore that many sources. Does that make sense? Because here is the trap here. The articles that are saying no, they're not overpaid, are mostly the articles that are not credible. It's a trap. So, which credible article have I still not read? C. Let's go back. C is definitely the longest, which is why I would leave it to the end. After discovering I only really have three credible sources, and after reading the two shorter ones, I already have a good idea in my head of where I need to go. I'm either going to need to say, yes, they're overpaid, or I'm going to need to qualify it, because that's where two out of my three sources are leading me. So now when I'm going into what is the longest and most difficult to read source, I already have a clear idea in my head of where my essay really needs to go. Does that make sense? Okay, you have 5 minutes. Go read. Okay, guys, that was only 10 minutes I gave you for reading. How long do you have to read for this? You have 15. Is it doable? Yeah. Now, source C, if you notice, they've got some really good specific information on average players that I could pull to create that qualify if I want to use a qualify. If I want to say, yes, they are overpaid, I could use this as evidence on the other side and use it as part of a concession rebuttal. When you're doing concession rebuttal, the best papers are going to address the concerns of something which is credible. Can you pull the letters to the editors as part of your concession rebuttal? Yes. But how hard is it to knock down information that is not credible to begin with? That's pretty easy. If you address something which has credible arguments behind it. So if you're doing a yes and you use this and you pull something from here that is a legitimate argument and then you tear it down, it makes you stronger because you have addressed a strong argument to begin with. If you attack a weak argument, it makes you look weak. These notes you can absolutely keep. So